Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie Americana 2023 in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video the movie we are going to talk about is called Americana 2023, and we are going to cover everything you need to know about it. This includes what this movie is about, where you can watch it, and many interesting facts from behind the scenes that make this film special. I will take you through each important aspect of the film so you will get a clear and complete picture by the end of this video. We will discuss the technical departments, the music, the pre-production phase, the filming process, post-production details, budget, and box office performance. You will also get a concise story overview and a short review of the plot that helps you understand what the movie delivers without giving away too many spoilers. In addition to this, we will break down the performances of the star cast, explain who played which role, and highlight any standout moments that left a lasting impression on the audience. This is a complete guide to Americana 2023 designed for those who are curious about the movie before watching it or want to know all the details after they have seen it. Americana 2023 is one of those films that attracted attention due to its unique concept and the way it portrays its subject matter. From the very beginning of its production, the movie generated buzz for its casting choices and the creative team behind it. During the pre-production phase, a lot of planning went into the script development, location selection, and securing the right crew to bring the story to life. The filmmakers wanted to ensure that every technical detail aligned with the vision they had for the final product. Costume design, set building, and visual style were carefully decided before filming even started. This attention to detail shows how much effort was put in even before the first scene was shot. When it came to filming, the production team focused on creating an authentic atmosphere that would immerse viewers into the story. Filming locations were chosen to reflect the tone of the narrative, and the cinematography was handled with precision to highlight both the emotional and visual aspects of the movie. The use of natural lighting in certain scenes and controlled studio settings in others gave the film a balance between realism and cinematic style. Each frame was planned to enhance the storytelling and connect the audience with the characters on screen. The music of Americana 2023 plays an important role in building the emotional weight of the story. The soundtrack blends background scores that heighten tension and moments of calm with thematic pieces that remain in your mind even after the movie ends. Sound design and editing were also key aspects of post-production, ensuring that dialogue, music, and effects were perfectly balanced. In post-production, the film underwent careful editing to refine the pacing of the story and ensure smooth transitions between scenes. Visual effects, if any, were used minimally and only to support the story without overpowering it. Color grading was performed to give the film its unique look, which complements its overall mood. From a financial perspective, the budget of Americana 2023 was allocated strategically to get the best possible result without unnecessary expenditure. The production team made sure to invest in areas that would directly impact the viewer's experience, such as set design, cinematography, and high-quality equipment. The box office performance of the film reflected a steady response from audiences who were curious about its premise and attracted by its cast. While it may not have broken every record, it managed to create a buzz and leave its mark among the movies released in that period. The story of Americana 2023 follows a path that mixes personal struggles with broader themes that resonate with many viewers. Without revealing every plot twist, the movie revolves around a central character whose journey represents both individual ambition and the challenges faced in a changing society. There are moments of tension, moments of reflection, and sequences that show the conflict between dreams and reality. The narrative is paced in a way that keeps the audience engaged without rushing through the important developments. Characters are given space to grow and their interactions feel organic, which makes the plot more relatable and meaningful. The performances of the star cast deserve special mention. Each actor brought their own strength to the screen, whether through subtle expressions, powerful dialogue delivery, or strong on-screen presence. The lead actors carried the emotional weight of the story effectively, while the supporting cast added depth and layers to the narrative. Some standout moments include intense confrontations, heartfelt conversations, and visually striking scenes that stay in the memory long after watching. The chemistry between the cast members also helped in making their relationships believable, which is crucial for a story-driven film like this. Americana 2023 also reflects the efforts of its technical departments behind the scenes. Cinematographers, editors, sound designers, and production designers all contributed to creating a seamless and immersive experience. It is easy to overlook these aspects when talking about a movie, but they play a significant role in shaping how the final product is received by audiences. The collaboration between departments made sure that no element felt out of place and everything served the larger vision of the director and producers. In summary, this video aims to give you a detailed yet concise look at Americana 2023 from its making to its impact. If you are someone who enjoys learning what goes on behind the scenes, this guide will provide you with everything you need. From the initial concept to the execution, from music to visual storytelling, from star performances to overall atmosphere, this film has many aspects worth exploring. Watch this video till the end to gain insight into what made Americana 2023 stand out in its year of release, and decide for yourself whether it is a movie you would like to watch or recommend to others. Americana, written and directed by Tony Tost in his feature debut, is a violent neo-Western crime drama that premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival in March 2023 and follows a knot of desperate, eccentric characters whose lives collide over a stolen Lakota ghost shirt that becomes the film's moral and narrative fulcrum. The movie centers on Penny Jo Poplin, played by Sydney Sweeney, a shy diner waitress with a stutter and a quietly burning dream of country music stardom, and Lefty Ledbetter, played by Paul Walter Hauser, a down-on-his-luck military veteran who befriends her and becomes both her protector and co-conspirator in a chain of events set off by theft and brutality. Mandy Starr, portrayed by Halsey, is a battered young mother whose violent relationship with Dylan McIntosh, played by Eric Dane, and her attempts to escape with her son Cal Starr, played by Gavin Maddox Bergman, provide the immediate catalyst for the film's opening tragedy. Early in the story, Cal, a boy obsessed with Western lore who believes himself the reincarnation of Sitting Bull, returns home after buying a bow and arrows to find his sister Mandy fleeing in Dylan's car with a stolen artifact known as the Ghost Shirt, and when Dylan reappears, Cal kills him with the bow in a moment that shocks the town and sets in motion competing pursuits of the artifact and of survival. Parallel to that thread, the sleazy antiquities dealer Roy Lee Dean, played by Simon Rex, arranges a brutal burglary intended to secure Native American relics for the black market. That break-in escalates to multiple murders and leaves a trail of bodies and wounded pride, while Dylan's partner Fun Dave, Joe Adler, is murdered in a panic and greed spiral that reveals how deeply the Ghost Shirt's cultural and monetary worth has been commodified. Penny Jo discovers a napkin with a note about a meeting concerning a large sum of money while at work, and Lefty, hoping to help fund Penny's Nashville dream, eavesdrops, and soon the two find themselves following leads that take them into the orbit of Mandy, the Starr family compound, and the bloodied underside of small-town commerce. Mandy, with nowhere else to go, returns to her father Hiram's well-armed wooded compound where patriarchal rules and violence are the order of the day. Hiram's brutal enforcement and the compound's militia-like readiness make Mandy's attempt to negotiate safety and cash both desperate and morally compromised. At the same time, a militant local Native American group led by Ghost Eye, played by Zahn McClarnon, learns of the theft and resolves to retrieve the Ghost Shirt and return it to its rightful community, introducing into the story a politically charged aim that complicates what might otherwise be a simple crime caper. Ghost Eye and his followers operate with ideological intensity and are willing to use force to right a perceived historical wrong. When the native contingent arrives at the Starr compound, a chaotic siege unfolds that mixes arrows and gunfire and eventually forces an uneasy ceasefire after the Starr women take up arms, revealing the complexities of gender violence and survival under a patriarchal stronghold. Mandy arranges for Roy Lee to come pick up the shirt as part of a counterplan, but the ambush goes wrong and devolves into a Western-style standoff in which loyalties shift and nearly everyone pays a price. Penny Jo, in a frantic effort, fires to distract Roy, and in doing so exposes the group's presence and helps save Lefty long enough for him to propose to her before he succumbs to his wounds. A heartbreaking moment that pays a high emotional price for the film's noir streak. In the aftermath, Penny Jo manages to secure and split money with Mandy's family and flees toward Nashville with Cal and the immediate promise of a new life, though she is emotionally scarred. Cal ultimately gives the Ghost Shirt to Ghost Eye, who accepts it but rejects Cal's claim to tribal belonging, a somber closing on questions of appropriation, identity, and the limits of symbolic restitution. Across these events, the film alternates dark humor and bleak violence while interrogating American myth-making, the monetization of indigenous objects, and the way small lives are buffeted by larger histories. Sydney Sweeney's Penny Jo functions as the audience anchor, bringing tenderness and vulnerability. Paul Walter Hauser lends ragged humanity to Lefty. Halsey surprises with rawness as Mandy, and Zahn McClarnon supplies the native perspective with weight, while Simon Rex and Eric Dane personify the sleaze and menace that set the tragic machinations in motion. The supporting cast, including Gavin Maddox Bergman as Cal, Joe Adler as Fun Dave, and Toby Huss as Pendleton Duval, populate the film's corners with memorable oddness and occasionally sharp comic notes that offset the bloodier beats. Ultimately, Americana is structured as a compact moral puzzle. A stolen relic moves through greed, fear, and grief, and the characters' attempts to convert pain into safety produce only partial answers, leaving the audience with a mixture of grim payoff and uneasy reflection on who profits from history and who is left to pick up the pieces. UTM_source =chat.com Americana, 2025. Americana 2023 opens with a striking image that sets its tone immediately, a quiet rural backdrop where violence feels like it could erupt at any moment. The film does not waste time establishing its grim atmosphere and introduces Cal, star, a boy fascinated by Western lore who is portrayed by Gavin Maddox Bergman as someone teetering between innocence and a dangerous sense of destiny. The setup unfolds slowly as we meet Mandy, Starr, played by Halsey, a young mother desperate to escape her violent relationship with Dylan McIntosh, played by Eric Dane. The opening act establishes Mandy's struggle, her bond with her son Cal, and her decision to flee with a stolen Native American ghost shirt, a sacred Lakota artifact that soon becomes the centerpiece of the story. The inciting incident arrives when Cal uses his newly bought bow and arrow to kill Dylan after catching him in a tense standoff over the shirt. This single act of violence sets the story in motion, creating ripples of revenge, greed, and desperation that pull multiple characters together. From this point, the rising action begins, weaving the paths of Penny Jo Poplin, played by Sydney Sweeney, a waitress with dreams of becoming a country singer, and Lefty Ledbetter, played by Paul Walter Hauser, a drifting veteran who forms an unexpected bond with her. Their discovery of a note about a secretive deal involving a large sum of money propels them into a world of crime and opportunity tied to the stolen relic. As the narrative develops, we meet Roy Lee Dean, played by Simon Rex, a corrupt antiquities dealer orchestrating theft and murder to profit from native artifacts. We also encounter Ghost Eye, played by Zahn McLarnon, a militant native leader determined to retrieve the ghost shirt and return it to its rightful place. The film's structure is largely linear, but it reveals character motivations in layers, giving us fragments of backstory only when necessary to deepen the stakes. The middle section of the movie serves as its most dynamic stretch. The rising action escalates as Mandy takes refuge with her father Hiram in a heavily armed rural compound where patriarchal control and violence dominate. Here the plot thickens with tense alliances, fragile trust, and brewing confrontations. Penny Jo and Lefty become entangled in this environment, their own motives shifting from mere survival to something more profound as their bond deepens. The big mid-film turn comes when the militant native group storms the Star compound, resulting in a chaotic standoff that forces all sides to reckon with the ghost shirt's value, both material and spiritual. This moment reframes the story from being a simple crime pursuit into a meditation on history, restitution, and the cost of reclaiming what has been lost. Emotional peaks during this section include a tense negotiation between Mandy and her father, an almost tender moment where Lefty confesses his hopes to Penny Jo, and a violent ambush gone wrong that shatters the temporary balance among the factions. The narrative choice to allow women in the Star family to arm themselves and resist the siege adds complexity, showing that survival often cuts across traditional loyalties. As the film moves into its final act, the stakes narrow but the tension heightens. Mandy arranges to exchange the shirt for cash with Roy Lee Dean, but this meeting spirals into bloodshed when betrayals are exposed and plans collapse under the weight of greed and mistrust. Penny Jo, in an act of desperation, shoots to distract Roy, exposing herself and ultimately ensuring Lefty's survival for a brief moment. Their emotional connection reaches its peak here with a proposal whispered in the chaos, only for Lefty to succumb to his injuries soon after. This bittersweet climax marks a turning point for Penny Jo, who takes the money and flees with Cal, aiming to start a new life in Nashville even as she carries the scars of everything she endured. The finale closes with Cal handing the ghost shirt to Ghost Eye, who accepts it solemnly but rejects Cal's claim to native identity, reminding both him and the audience that some wounds cannot be mended by simple gestures. This final beat is quiet and reflective, leaving viewers with lingering questions about belonging, cultural theft, and the cost of redemption. The narrative ends not with a triumphant resolution, but with an uneasy sense of survival and partial restitution, a choice that fits the bleak tone established from the opening. Throughout the film, key turning points are marked not only by bursts of violence but by small decisions: Penny Jo choosing to stay rather than flee, Lefty deciding to follow her into danger, Mandy risking everything for her son, that cumulatively shaped the trajectory of the story. The filmmakers use moments of stillness to let these choices sink in, and scenes like Cal's first killing, the tense compound siege, and the final handover of the shirt are designed to resonate beyond their immediate function in the plot. Americana 2023 plays it mostly straight in its chronology, but its selective reveals of character histories and motives add tension by keeping the audience slightly off balance until crucial moments. This approach allows the mid-film twists to land harder and the finale to feel both inevitable and tragic. By the end, viewers have witnessed a chain of greed, violence, and fractured dreams, all orbiting a single artifact that represents a history far larger than any one of the characters, yet binds their fates together. In Americana 2023, the characters form the backbone of a story that explores desperation, greed, survival, and the lingering wounds of history, each carrying their own motivations, flaws, and potential for change. At the heart of the film is Penny Jo Poplin, played by Sydney Sweeney, introduced as a shy, stuttering waitress with unfulfilled dreams of becoming a country singer. At the beginning she wants escape from her mundane life and a chance to chase her Nashville aspirations but lacks the means and confidence to do so. Her journey becomes one of reluctant courage as she is pulled into the dangerous pursuit of the ghost shirt and the violent world surrounding it. Subtle gestures such as her careful listening to customers and her hesitant curiosity toward Lefty show her initial timidity, yet as the film progresses she makes choices that place her in active roles, including firing a shot in the climax to protect those she cares about and ultimately seizing the money to start anew. This marks a clear shift from passive dreamer to someone who acts on her own terms, albeit at a heavy cost. Lefty Ledbetter, portrayed by Paul Walter Hauser, starts as a drifting veteran struggling with purpose and quietly drawn to Penny Joe's warmth. His arc is one of self-sacrifice and the longing for redemption. Early scenes reveal his awkward humor and protective instincts, but his decision to involve himself in the scheme shows both a desire for belonging and a misguided attempt to do something meaningful. His proposal to Penny Joe near the end, moments before his death, is his ultimate gesture of change, revealing a man who found a reason to hope again even in the face of mortality. Mandy Starr, played by Halsey, is a battered young mother introduced as a victim of her abusive partner Dylan McIntosh, played by Eric Dane. At first her motive is simple survival for herself and her son Cal, yet her choices often waver between escape and compromise as she returns to her father Hiram's oppressive compound. Her arc is more ambiguous than Penny Joe's, showing flashes of strength in negotiating the exchange of the ghost shirt, but also revealing her entanglement in cycles of control and violence that she cannot fully break free from. Cal Starr, played by Gavin Maddox Bergman, is the child whose act of violence sets everything into motion. Obsessed with Western myths and imagining himself the reincarnation of Sitting Bull, he begins as a boy grasping for identity, and ends as someone confronted with rejection and disillusionment when Ghost, played by Zahn McClarnon, refuses to accept his claim of native belonging. His gesture of handing over the ghost shirt signifies both a surrender and a step toward maturity, realizing that not all desires are meant to be fulfilled. The antagonistic forces are layered rather than singular. Dylan McIntosh represents immediate violence and patriarchal control. His abuse and theft spark the opening tragedy, but he is removed early. Roy Lee Dean, played by Simon Rex, embodies greed and opportunism, willing to spill blood for profit, while Hiram represents entrenched rural patriarchy, a figure whose compound operates as both a physical and ideological barrier to freedom. Ghost is not an antagonist in the traditional sense but serves as a moral counterweight. His mission to reclaim the shirt drives conflict, yet his rejection of Cal at the end underscores the film's theme of cultural boundaries and unresolved histories. Side characters such as Fun Dave Joe Adler and Pendleton Duval Toby Huss add texture to the world rather than serving as mere decoration. Fun Dave's panic and murder set a tone of chaotic greed. Pendleton's role in the artifact trade adds context to the black market economy, and Hiram's daughters reveal the gendered tension within the compound, showing that even minor characters carry narrative weight in illustrating the film's themes. Throughout the film, character development is revealed in subtle beats. Penny Joe's softening toward Lefty, her moment of resolve during the ambush, and her silent grief after his death are unspoken yet powerful markers of growth. Lefty's clumsy attempts to help, at first driven by personal gain, shift into genuine care and sacrifice. Mandy's haunted glances toward her son Cal after the opening killing reveal guilt and survival instinct in equal measure. Even Roy Lee Dean in his final scenes displays flashes of arrogance crumbling into fear, exposing his shallow core. The film resists tidy redemptions. Penny Joe achieves a measure of agency but at a cost to her innocence. Lefty finds meaning but loses his life. Mandy survives yet remains morally compromised. Cal moves forward stripped of illusion but burdened by his actions. The antagonists largely meet violent ends without cathartic justice, leaving the sense that change in Americana is often partial, painful, and entangled with loss. This construction of arcs reflects the film's larger commentary on American mythmaking and the ghosts of history, showing that growth does not always mean triumph, and that survival sometimes replaces redemption as the highest attainable goal. In Americana 2023, the performances serve as the engine that drives its blend of crime drama and bleak Western tone, each actor bringing a distinct energy that either grounds the film or occasionally pulls against its atmosphere. Sydney Sweeney as Penny Joe Poplin delivers one of her most restrained yet quietly resonant performances. She disappears into the role of a shy small-town waitress with a stutter balancing vulnerability and latent strength without slipping into caricature. Her timing in scenes of hesitation, the subtle tremor in her voice when discussing her dreams, and the steely resolve in her eyes during the ambush sequence show a performer deeply attuned to the arc of her character. One of her most electric moments comes in the final act when she fires the shot that exposes her and Lefty to Roy Lee Dean's wrath, her body language shifting instantly from panic to grim determination, signaling the point of no return for Penny Joe. Paul Walter Hauser as Lefty Ledbetter provides the film with its bruised heart. Known for his ability to mix humor and pathos, he brings a rumpled charm to a drifting veteran who finds purpose in his bond with Penny Jo. His vocal choices, soft and almost unsure in early scenes, grow steadier as his feelings for her become clear, culminating in his halting proposal delivered amidst chaos, which lands as one of the film's most affecting beats precisely because it is clumsy, sincere, and too late. Their chemistry, while understated, feels lived in small glances, half smiles, and mutual wariness slowly transforming into trust. Halsey as Mandy Starr surprises with a raw and jagged turn that avoids glamorizing the victim archetype. Her physicality, bruised shoulders, hunched posture, quick darting looks embodies a woman constantly measuring danger, while her sharper moments negotiating with her father or pleading for her son's future reveal flashes of steel beneath the fear. The scene where she confronts Roy Lee about the exchange shows her ability to pivot from desperate to calculating within a single breath. Gavin Maddox Bergman as Cal Starr carries a difficult role, a child whose first act of violence defines the story. His performance teeters between eerie calm and youthful confusion, his fixation on Western myths played with a matter-of-fact sincerity that makes his later disillusionment with Ghost Eye quietly heartbreaking. Simon Rex as Roy Lee Dean injects the film with oily menace. His timing is impeccable in scenes where charm masks cruelty, and his physical looseness, the lazy drape over a chair, the sudden snap into aggression, underscores a predator comfortable in his world until it turns on him. His final unraveling when the ambush collapses shows how quickly bravado can curdle into panic. Eric Dane as Dylan McIntosh has less screen time but sets the tone for the story's cycle of violence. His brute presence, a growled threat here, a sudden strike there, leaves a shadow over Mandy and Cal long after his early death. Zahn McClarnon as Ghost Eye brings gravitas and stillness. His measured speech, deliberate pauses, and unwavering stare give weight to the political and spiritual stakes of the Ghost shirt. The scene where he rejects Cal's claim of native identity is one of the film's quiet gut punches, played without raised voice, only with a look that carries centuries of exclusion and loss. Among the supporting players, Joe Adler as Fun Dave and Toby Huss as Pendleton Duval add eccentric texture. Adler's twitchy panic in the botched burglary sequence creates a ripple effect of violence, while Huss plays his role with a blend of weariness and opportunism that suggests a man who has seen too much to be surprised by greed. Not every performance lands equally. Some of the Starr compound family members feel thinly sketched, their line deliveries functional rather than memorable, and in a few group scenes the tonal balance between bleak humor and genuine threat wavers, leaving certain interactions feeling slightly out of step with the rest of the film's controlled menace. Yet the core ensemble, particularly Sweeney, Hauser, Halsey, Rex, and McClarnon, provide a sturdy spine for the narrative. Their physicality, their ability to hold silence, and their timing in moments of moral or literal crossfire elevate what could have been a straightforward neo-Western into something more unsettling and resonant. Even when lines are simple or expository, these actors often find a beat, a glance, or a breath that adds subtext, transforming plot into lived experience. In Americana 2023, the direction by Tony Tost reveals a filmmaker intent on merging a grim neo-Western aesthetic with character-driven crime drama, using a deliberate mix of mood, pacing, and composition to give the film its identity. Tost steers the tone with a steady hand, opting for a slow burn approach rather than explosive spectacle, which allows tension to simmer beneath quiet scenes before erupting into violence. From the opening rural image, he sets a visual language that relies on muted colors, wide frames that evoke isolation, and sudden bursts of intimacy when the camera closes in on faces at pivotal emotional moments. His preference for lingering medium-wide shots during dialogue creates an uneasy space where characters seem both trapped in their environment and distanced from one another, while occasional close-ups are reserved for moments of choice or fear, amplifying their weight. The pacing in the first act reflects this methodical style, introducing characters gradually and revealing their motives in fragments. This choice builds intrigue but risks alienating viewers expecting faster momentum. The inciting incident, the boy Cal killing Dylan, lands with more impact precisely because the build-up feels understated and naturalistic. Tost uses abrupt cuts sparingly but effectively, particularly in the siege sequence at the Starr compound, where chaos is conveyed through disorienting angles and brief edits that contrast sharply with the film's otherwise measured rhythm. One of his confident decisions is the way he guides performances toward restraint. Sydney Sweeney's Penny Jo is never allowed to become melodramatic even in scenes of high tension, and Paul Walter Hauser's Lefty is played as awkward and flawed rather than heroic, which grounds their arc in the film's bleak reality. Halsey's Mandy is framed in tight over-the-shoulder shots when negotiating with her father, a choice that communicates her claustrophobia and lack of autonomy. Tost also uses silence as a directorial tool, allowing background noise and unspoken tension to fill scenes where exposition might have been forced, particularly in the early diner sequences and in the quiet standoffs between Ghost Eye and the Starr family. However, some choices reveal the unevenness of a debut feature. The middle act occasionally drifts with scenes that reiterate power dynamics without advancing the plot, and a few transitional cuts feel abrupt without serving a thematic purpose. At times the balance between dark humor and grim violence wavers, leaving tonal whiplash that distracts from the otherwise cohesive mood. The film structure is largely linear, a safe choice that keeps the complex ensemble from becoming incomprehensible, but it also limits the potential for tension that non-linear storytelling might have offered. Tost's staging during the ambush and final exchange demonstrates his understanding of Western iconography. Long lines of sight, sudden eruptions of gunfire, characters positioned in doorways and under open skies to underscore vulnerability. The emotional ride is heightened in these sequences by his willingness to hold a shot a beat longer than comfortable, making the audience anticipate the violence rather than delivering it in quick relief. His collaboration with the cinematographer shows in the textured lighting of night scenes and the dusty palette of daytime exteriors, crafting a world that feels both contemporary and haunted by older frontier myths. Where the direction truly asserts itself is in the finale. The quiet handover of the ghost shirt from Cal to Ghost Eye is staged without flourish, a simple exchange in a bare space that reflects the film's central theme of restitution that does not heal all wounds. Tost resists the urge for catharsis and instead closes on an uneasy calm, a choice that may frustrate those looking for resolution but aligns with the narrative's moral ambiguity. Actor guidance is one of his strengths, as even supporting players like Simon Rex and Zahn McClarnon deliver performances with precise physical and vocal beats that match the director's restrained tone. Yet some compound family members feel underdirected, their menace more implied than embodied, leaving them as narrative placeholders rather than vivid presences. Overall, Tost's directorial control makes Americana a film defined by mood and slow-burn suspense rather than set-piece spectacle. His signatures in this debut suggest a filmmaker more interested in tension built through space and silence than in rapid cutting or overt stylistic flourishes. The confident moments where atmosphere and character intersect leave lasting impressions, while the less assured transitions and occasional pacing drag remind the viewer that this is a first feature finding its balance between ambition and execution. In Americana, 2023, the cinematography serves as a vital storytelling instrument, establishing mood and narrative tone from first frame to last. The visuals are never merely ornamental. Every composed shot works to deepen the themes of isolation, broken dreams, and moral fracture in this neo-Western crime drama. Wide-angle frames of rural, decaying landscapes introduce a world that feels simultaneously expansive and claustrophobic. The terrain, weathered and sparsely populated, underscores how small the characters are within a mythic American landscape. This visual choice communicates their fragility and desperation, setting up an emotional resonance even before a line of dialogue is spoken. The color palette leans toward dust-toned hues, muted browns, sun-bleached grays, and weathered wood textures, creating a visual language that echoes the decay of frontier myths. Lighting is often low-slanted or late golden hour light that washes characters in a dusty glow, suggesting hope tainted by weariness. Interiors such as Penny Joe's Diner or the Star Compound are lit to emphasize texture, with soft light spilling across rough surfaces, granting every detail a lived-in quality. These environments feel layered with history, and the lighting reveals that history without forcing it. The cinematography skillfully balances wide framing with moments of tight intimacy. Broad, open vistas emphasize how isolated and small the characters are in a harsh world. In contrast, close-ups are reserved for emotional peaks or moments of decision, when a character's resolve hardens, or fear settles in their gaze. This rhythm of wide and tight matches the emotional flow of the narrative, isolation followed by confrontation, anonymity followed by identity. It allows the audience to feel both the character's place in the landscape and their inner turmoil. Camera movement is deliberate rather than flashy. Tracking shots are used sparingly and only when they enhance discovery or tension. For instance, following a character into uncertain terrain or trailing behind someone who may be in danger. Instead, stillness rules many scenes, creating a quiet atmosphere in which every rustle, every glance carries weight. When violence erupts, the camera fractures the rhythm through abrupt cuts and shaky framing. This contrast between calm and chaos visually mirrors the characters' emotional fractures and the unpredictability of their world. Certain scenes are visually composed to linger in memory. The siege at the Star Compound, for instance, uses tight framing, oppressive shadows, and sudden bursts of gunfire to compound the tension. The framing highlights both the physical threat and the emotional desperation roiling beneath the surface. Characters crowded into corridors, light slicing through doorways, and flashbulb reactions to danger. These moments underscore that violence in this world is abrupt and personal, not stylized or glorified. Conversely, the handing over of the stolen ghost shirt is staged in near minimalism. The mise-en scene is stripped down, a bare room, soft, even lighting, and a composition that lingers on characters' faces. In this quiet exchange, every line or gesture gains symbolic weight. The cinematographer allows the camera to hover, as if honoring the artifact's cultural gravity. There is an emotional stillness here that contrasts with the chaos of earlier scenes, and it lingers in memory because its restraint is so careful. Interior lighting consistently reinforces character state. In the diner, warm light glances off the countertop, giving Penny Joe's world a faint glow that feels both welcoming and trapped. The compound is lit more harshly. Side light casts deep shadows across faces, suggesting moral gray zones and hidden agendas. Entrances and thresholds are often backlit, rendering characters half in shadow, visually reinforcing that motives and loyalties remain murky. The contrast between scenes of stillness and eruption gives the film a visual rhythm that mirrors its thematic rhythm. Quiet scenes, Penny Joe's stuttered glances, Cal's solemn reverence for Western myths, are shot steadily, offering space for reflection. Then violence bursts in, lighting becomes harsher, edits more abrupt, and compositions skewed. This visual cadence keeps the viewer off balance, which compounds the story's emotional impact. Critics have often noted that the visual style is one of Americana's strongest assets, even when narrative or tonal shifts feel uneven. That consensus traces back to the cinematography's ability to root mood in the very texture of the world. It communicates isolation, moral ambiguity, and the decay of myth without dialogue. Landscape and light become characters themselves, witnessing, shaping, and responding to the human drama playing out among them. By the end of the film, many images stay with the viewer. Horizons that swallow people whole, faces lit from the side like they carry burdens no sound can express, the ghost shirt held in a simple, hushed frame. These are the visual memories that endure because they feel essential to the story's emotional weight. Every framed detail, whether a dust-worn building, a slant of golden light, or a fragile character's face, is part of the film's moral landscape. In Americana, the cinematography is not decoration, it is essential, shaping how the story lands and what it stays with you. The editing and pacing of Americana 2023 play a crucial role in shaping its narrative flow and overall impact, acting as the invisible hand that guides the viewer's emotional journey from scene to scene. The film adopts a rhythm that alternates between measured, reflective sequences and sharper, more fragmented passages, creating a dynamic yet sometimes uneven experience. Early on, the editing favors longer takes and fluid transitions that allow the audience to absorb the atmosphere of the setting and the inner workings of the characters. This approach builds a sense of immersion, letting the world breathe and giving performances room to resonate without being hurried along. However, as the story unfolds and tensions rise, the cuts become quicker, and the film occasionally leans on montage to compress time or propel the narrative forward. In moments of conflict or revelation, cross-cutting is employed to heighten suspense, showing multiple perspectives converging toward a single outcome, which works effectively in certain key scenes but at times creates a sense of disorientation when the stakes are already high. Flashbacks are integrated with a deliberate sense of timing, often appearing without heavy-handed cues, relying on subtle visual or tonal shifts to signal transitions to the past. This choice aligns with the film's understated style but may leave some viewers momentarily uncertain about chronology, which can be both a strength and a weakness depending on one's preference for clarity versus ambiguity. The pacing across the three acts reveals an intentional design. The first act is slower, laying thematic groundwork and exploring character relationships with patience, while the second act accelerates as conflicts deepen and alliances fracture. It is here that the editing sharpens, using quicker cuts and overlapping scenes to reflect the mounting pressure within the narrative. The final act finds a middle ground, alternating between intense, tightly cut sequences and slower, lingering moments that give weight to decisions and consequences. In certain instances, the film allows silence and pauses to dominate, resisting the temptation of constant motion or dialogue, and these moments of restraint often carry the greatest emotional weight. They serve as reminders that the film is at its most powerful when it trusts stillness rather than speed to communicate meaning. That said, there are points where the pacing falters, particularly when extended contemplative stretches follow scenes of high tension, slightly diffusing the energy that has been carefully built. Likewise, a few transitions feel abrupt rather than organic, pulling the viewer out of the rhythm just as it begins to flow. Nevertheless, the overall editing strategy reflects a clear vision, favoring a balance between introspection and urgency, allowing the story to unfold with a human, almost meandering texture rather than adhering strictly to formulaic beats. The editors seem conscious of when to linger on a face, a gesture, or a landscape, and when to pull away, understanding that the emotional resonance often lives in the in-between spaces rather than the obvious peaks. The film does not rely on rapid-fire cutting or overly stylized transitions to sustain interest. Instead, it seeks to create an ebb and flow that mirrors the internal states of its characters and the shifting tone of the narrative. There are sequences where the editing amplifies emotion brilliantly, such as intimate exchanges where the rhythm slows to match the weight of the words being shared, or in climactic moments where faster cutting mirrors the fracturing of trust and the urgency of decisions being made under pressure. Yet one might argue that a slightly more disciplined approach to the middle section could have maintained tension without sacrificing coherence. Ultimately, the editing of Americana 2023 does not aim to dazzle with flash or complexity. It aims to serve the story, to create a sense of lived-in time that oscillates between the deliberate and the immediate. It is a style that rewards patience, asking the audience to settle into its tempo, and while not without its missteps, it succeeds more often than it stumbles in guiding the emotional cadence of the film. The soundtrack and score of Americana 2023 serve as an integral narrative force, shaping the emotional tone and guiding the viewer through the film's layered storytelling. Music in this film is not merely an accessory but a deliberate tool that heightens the atmosphere, reflects the characters' inner states, and amplifies the stakes in pivotal scenes. The film employs a mix of original score and carefully chosen licensed tracks that create a distinct sonic texture fitting its gritty yet poignant themes. There are recurring motifs throughout the score that subtly tie back to the protagonist's journey and the larger political and cultural tensions embedded in the plot. For example, a low, almost imperceptible drone recurs during moments of moral ambiguity or inner conflict, underscoring the protagonist's uncertainty and the weight of choices ahead. In contrast, there are bursts of rhythmic, almost percussive elements during sequences of movement or confrontation, creating a pulse that mirrors the character's urgency. The use of silence is equally powerful. Key emotional scenes often strip away the soundtrack entirely, allowing the raw performances and ambient sounds of the environment to take center stage, which makes the reintroduction of music afterward even more impactful. One of the most striking moments comes during a scene where tension builds without a single note played, only for a haunting motif to creep in as the emotional dam breaks, turning a simple moment into one of the film's most unforgettable beats. Licensed music choices feel era-appropriate and regionally resonant, often pulling from American roots, folk, and blues traditions that reflect the film's exploration of identity, displacement, and resilience. These tracks are used sparingly but effectively, often appearing during transitions or reflective pauses rather than overtly driving the narrative, which gives them a sense of authenticity rather than manipulation. There are times, however, when the score leans into melodrama more than necessary, slightly telegraphing emotions the performances already convey. In some sequences, a more restrained approach might have allowed viewers to engage with the scene on their own terms without feeling cued. Yet even in those moments, the craftsmanship of the composition remains evident, with instrumentation choices that echo the dusty, sun-drenched Americana aesthetic of the visuals. Steel strings, soft percussion, and lingering ambient textures that feel both familiar and unsettling. The closing act of the film makes particularly effective use of its central musical theme, weaving it into a crescendo that ties the narrative and emotional threads together without overwhelming them. It feels like a culmination of everything the score has been whispering throughout the film, a final breath that leaves a lingering impression even after the screen fades to black. Sound design complements the music beautifully, ensuring that each cue feels grounded within the world rather than pasted over it. Environmental sounds often bleed seamlessly into the music, wind becoming a faint note, machinery morphing into a rhythmic pattern, creating an immersive audio experience that supports the film's tension and texture. This interplay between sound design and score gives Americana 2023 its unique sonic identity, one that resonates with the themes of survival, displacement, and a search for meaning in a harsh and shifting landscape. Ultimately, the soundtrack and score are neither flashy nor forgettable. They occupy a precise space between narrative service and artistic expression. They elevate key moments without demanding attention, they reveal layers of character psychology without exposition, and they craft a mood that lingers long after the film ends. Whether it is the mournful hum that follows the protagonist's most devastating realization or the understated yet triumphant cue that closes the final frame, music in Americana 2023 proves to be a quiet yet commanding storyteller in its own right. The themes and messages in Americana 2023 form the backbone of its narrative, shaping the characters' journeys and the conflicts that drive the story forward. At its core, the The film explores the tension between identity and belonging, examining how individuals define themselves when faced with forces that try to mold them into something else. The protagonist's struggle is not just a personal journey but a reflection of larger societal pressures, where cultural and generational divides play a significant role. The narrative delves into the question of what it means to stay true to one's roots while navigating a world that often demands assimilation or conformity. Revenge plays a substantial part in propelling the story, but it is not treated as a straightforward motive. Instead, the film portrays revenge as a corrosive force that intertwines with grief and trauma, showing how it can consume relationships and twist noble intentions into destructive actions. Redemption is another key thread, though it is portrayed in shades of gray rather than as a clear, redemptive arc. Characters in Americana 2023 often seek redemption not through grand gestures but through quieter, more personal reckonings with their past choices and their impact on others. Power dynamics are explored at multiple levels, from interpersonal relationships to broader societal structures. The film critiques how power can corrupt and how those who wield it often disguise control as care or protection. Fear operates in tandem with power, as characters make pivotal decisions out of fear of loss, change, or exposure, and the ripple effects of those fears shape much of the film's conflict. Love, while present, is complicated and often portrayed as a fragile force caught in the crossfire of ambition, vengeance, and mistrust. Rather than serving as an uncomplicated balm, love in this narrative frequently demands sacrifice and forces characters to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. The film communicates many of these ideas through imagery and action rather than overt exposition. Visual motifs, such as recurring shots of thresholds, fading light, or abandoned spaces, speak to themes of transition, decay, and the lingering weight of the past. Actions taken in silence, such as the withholding of a letter or the choice to walk away from a confrontation, often carry more thematic heft than the spoken words surrounding them. There are moments where the thematic delivery feels sharp and resonant, particularly in sequences where the protagonist is forced to choose between retaliation and restraint. Yet the film also contains deliberate ambiguities that leave interpretation open. At times, this works in its favor, allowing viewers to wrestle with competing ideas about justice, survival, and forgiveness. In other places, the messaging feels slightly muddled, as if the narrative hesitated to fully commit to a stance, leaving a few threads unresolved or contradictory. These mixed signals make Americana 2023 an engaging but occasionally challenging thematic experience, one that refuses to offer easy answers but rewards viewers willing to sit with its complexity and reflect on how identity, revenge, redemption, power, fear, and love intertwine within its world. The film is rooted in grounded neo-Western aesthetics, favoring practical settings, real locations, and tangible props over digital embellishments. Here's a nuanced breakdown of what that suggests about the film's approach to visuals and storytelling. From available descriptions and reviews, Americana unfolds in rural, rustic environments where authenticity feels central to the experience. The film was shot on location in New Mexico, and its aesthetic is repeatedly praised for its weathered landscapes and grounded production design. Those real-world shots, dusty roads, dilapidated interiors, the quiet isolation of the countryside, anchor the action in tangible reality rather than rendering it in a digital veneer. Because the story is tightly focused on crime, greed, cultural theft, and interpersonal stakes, all tied to a stolen artifact, any reliance on VFX for spectacle would feel out of step with the film's tone. Instead, the visuals likely prioritize framing, texture, and performance rather than digital augmentation. The film's strength lies in its tension, character moments, and moral undercurrents, all conveyed through atmosphere and staging rather than cinematic tricks. That said, if Americana does include minimal VFX, such as extending a sky, enhancing firelight, or cleaning up a prop, the execution seems seamless and without audience distraction, given the lack of mention in critical reviews. Typically, such subtle post-production work goes unnoticed unless overtly stylized or glitchy. In short, Americana's visual approach relies on classic, minimalist craftsmanship, real locations, practical props, lighting, texture, and composition. There is no indication of heavy compositing, motion capture, or overt CGI. This choice aligns with the film's moral grit and contemplative tone, ensuring that any visual enhancement serves storytelling rather than spectacle. The set design and location choices in Americana 2023 play a fundamental role in shaping the tone, authenticity, and narrative depth of the film. Production design is not just about what is seen on screen but how each element contributes to the world that the characters inhabit. From the smallest prop on a table to the vast landscapes that stretch across the horizon, Every visual decision helps reinforce the film's themes of greed, betrayal, and cultural conflict. Americana is deeply rooted in its setting, and its design choices reflect a deliberate effort to make the story feel grounded, raw, and lived in. One of the first things that stand out in the film is the commitment to real locations over artificial builds. Much of the movie was filmed on location in New Mexico, a choice that gives the film an immediate sense of authenticity. The dusty roads, weather-beaten storefronts, sparse rural houses, and open desert vistas create a palpable sense of place that a studio set could rarely replicate with the same richness. The natural textures of the land, the rough earth, faded signage, cracked pavements, and vast skies, mirror the grit of the story being told. These locations do not feel curated for beauty but rather for truth, capturing an America that is both familiar and harsh, beautiful in its decay and striking in its honesty. The interior spaces, from cramped apartments to local bars or community spaces, are dressed with remarkable attention to detail. Set designers appear to have prioritized a look of natural wear and history rather than polished surfaces or overly stylized decor. Furniture looks used, walls are often marked by years of wear, and personal spaces are cluttered in ways that reflect their owners' personalities and struggles. A couch with slightly torn fabric, a table covered with mismatched items, or a window frame with peeling paint, these details make the spaces feel inhabited and real. They also give the audience subtle clues about the characters' economic realities, their habits, and their relationships. Props further extend this narrative immersion. Everyday items are chosen not for their visual shine but for their storytelling potential. A worn-out jacket hanging by the door, a dusty bottle left on a counter, or a stack of unopened mail hints at neglect, urgency, or a life paused. In Americana, the artifact at the center of the plot, the stolen item, serves not just as a MacGuffin for the narrative but as a key piece of the production design, treated with weight and cultural texture. It feels like it belongs to a larger history, and the way it is handled, stored, or hidden reinforces its significance. The balance between real locations and constructed sets seems to lean heavily in favor of the former. If any sets were built, they appear to have been constructed with restraint, likely blending seamlessly into the location-heavy shooting style. There is little sense of artificiality or over-designed spaces. Instead, the production design respects the natural imperfection of the environments it captures. Lighting complements this approach, often using natural light or soft enhancements to emphasize textures rather than to glamorize them. Sunlight streaming through a dusty window or the dim flicker of a roadside neon sign adds atmosphere without breaking immersion. Another strength of the set design is its ability to reflect the shifting emotional landscapes of the characters. When scenes are tense, the spaces often feel tighter, more cluttered, or shadowed. When the film opens up to the wide outdoor shots, the sense of isolation and vulnerability grows. The geography of the film, its roads, small towns, and rural stretches, serves as a silent witness to the characters' choices and consequences. The production team uses these spaces to heighten the feeling of being trapped or exposed, depending on the moment. Cultural texture also plays a role. Americana touches on themes of theft and heritage, and the set dressing at times includes items, artworks, or motifs that nod to regional history. These details are subtle, never feeling forced or decorative, but they add weight to the underlying conflicts of the story. A mural half-faded on a wall, a traditional craft piece sitting unnoticed in a corner, these elements remind viewers of the layers of history present in the land and in the lives of those who inhabit it. In essence, the set design and location choices in Americana are not flashy or designed to draw attention to themselves. They are functional, narrative-driven, and thematically resonant. By grounding the film in real places and filling those places with authentic textures, the production creates a world that feels believable, harsh, and deeply intertwined with the characters' struggles. The result is a visual experience that supports the story without ever overshadowing it, making the audience feel like they are stepping into an environment that existed long before the cameras started rolling and will continue to exist after the credits fade. The dialogue and script in Americana 2023 play a significant role in shaping its identity, pacing, and emotional resonance, and examining them closely reveals both the film's strengths and its occasional missteps. The script strives to capture a tone that reflects the tension and ambiguity of its world, often using language that is terse yet revealing, while at other times leaning into poetic flourishes that suggest the characters are grappling with something larger than the immediate plot. One of the strengths lies in its ability to allow conversations to do double duty, moving the story forward while simultaneously unveiling hidden motivations or backstory. Early scenes, for example, often feature exchanges that seem mundane at first but upon reflection reveal foreshadowing or establish subtle dynamics of trust and betrayal. This layered approach gives attentive viewers something to unpack beyond the surface level. Subtext is one of the film's more effective tools. In several pivotal moments, characters say one thing but mean another, their words loaded with implication. A simple question about loyalty might actually be a veiled threat, or a casual remark about the past might conceal deep resentment. In these cases, the pauses, glances, and choice of phrasing carry as much weight as the lines themselves. The film does not over-explain every detail, allowing silence to function as dialogue in its own right. There are stretches where no words are spoken, yet the tension is palpable, and this restraint is where the script shows its confidence. The quieter moments between characters often convey more intimacy or hostility than any monologue could have achieved. However, the script is not without its occasional stumbles. There are instances where the dialogue leans too heavily on exposition, having characters state information they would already know simply for the audience's benefit. These moments tend to break the immersion, feeling less like authentic speech and more like narrative scaffolding. Similarly, a few lines stray into cliché territory, especially during moments of heightened drama where one might expect sharper, more distinctive language to emerge. Another aspect worth examining is how the dialogue reflects the film's themes. Americana 2023 often explores identity, disillusionment, and the lingering scars of conflict, and the script supports this by letting characters speak in fragments or contradictions, mirroring their fractured sense of self. There is a recurring motif of half-finished sentences and abrupt topic shifts, suggesting that some truths remain unsaid because they are too dangerous or too painful to articulate fully. The use of regional dialects, slang, and specific word choices also grounds the film in its setting, lending authenticity to its world building. Characters do not speak in a polished, cinematic cadence but in a way that feels weathered, inconsistent, and at times deliberately coarse. This helps maintain the atmosphere of a story that is more about raw survival than polished heroics. Conversations that serve as plot engines are particularly interesting because they are often masked as personal disputes or negotiations, meaning the viewer is drawn in by the human stakes while also receiving key narrative information. On the other hand, there are passages that feel like padding, scenes where dialogue stretches on without deepening our understanding of character or theme, as though the script feared losing momentum if it cut too quickly to the next beat. A more rigorous trim in these sections might have sharpened the film's overall rhythm. In sum, the dialogue and script of Americana 2023 reflect a deliberate effort to balance tension, authenticity, and thematic weight, achieving genuine resonance in many instances while occasionally faltering under the weight of its own ambition. It succeeds most when it trusts the audience to read between the lines and when it lets silence, implication, and gesture fill the gaps words cannot. Genre execution in Americana 2023 is a study in both homage and reinvention, blending recognizable dramatic structures with thematic undertones that resist easy categorization. At its core, the film presents itself as a drama, yet it borrows atmospheric tension and narrative beats from thriller conventions, and at times brushes against the edges of neo-noir. The film honors the expectations of a slow-burn character-driven piece, but it does not entirely surrender to them. Instead, it weaves in moments of unease, misdirection, and ambiguity that make the experience feel richer and more layered than a straightforward drama might suggest. In terms of classic beats, Americana 2023 delivers the essential components that audiences look for in an intimate drama: characters burdened by secrets, relationships tested by circumstance, and a gradual peeling back of truths that alters how the viewer perceives them. There are scenes of quiet confrontation, moral reckoning, and a sense of stakes that feel deeply personal rather than globally scaled. This focus on human consequence grounds the narrative, ensuring that when the story takes darker or more suspenseful turns, it feels earned rather than grafted on. However, the film does not stop at simply presenting these familiar elements. It recontextualizes them by shifting the pacing and resisting the tidy resolutions often associated with more conventional approaches. This is where it refreshes the genre. By leaving some threads deliberately frayed, it acknowledges the messiness of real human conflict. Americana 2023 avoids many of the clichés that could have turned it into a formulaic exercise. It resists the urge to over-explain its mysteries, sparing the audience from clunky exposition that often plagues similar works. Instead, information is revealed obliquely, through behavior, visual clues, and dialogue that carries an undercurrent of tension. The use of silence is particularly striking. Rather than filling every gap with words or dramatic score, the film often allows quiet moments to simmer, letting viewers project their own interpretations onto what is left unsaid. This patience in storytelling is one of its greatest strengths, and it differentiates it from dramas that feel the need to spell everything out. Where it occasionally leans on familiar tropes is in the framing of its central conflict, which hinges on a clash between past and present, guilt and redemption. These are well-trodden thematic grounds, and some viewers might find that the narrative trajectory feels recognizable even if the details are distinct. There are echoes of other character-driven rural dramas in its tone and setting, from the use of desolate landscapes as emotional mirrors to the archetype of a protagonist trying to outrun their history. Yet even when these familiarities arise, the film treats them with enough restraint and nuance that they rarely feel stale. For fans of the genre, Americana 2023 offers a satisfying balance of comfort and challenge. It delivers the emotional heft and intimate scope that they expect but complicates it with choices that create friction, deliberately unresolved arcs, morally gray decisions, and an ending that refrains from delivering full catharsis. For those less accustomed to its slow rhythm, this approach may feel meandering or frustrating, particularly if they come expecting a thriller-like payoff that never fully materializes. That risk is inherent in hybrid works. By refusing to settle neatly into one box, the film may alienate viewers who crave more definitive genre adherence. But for those willing to embrace a slower, more contemplative cadence, its hybrid nature becomes its strength, allowing it to explore not just the external consequences of its plot but the internal landscapes of its characters. In this sense, Americana 2023 executes its genre ambitions with care and a degree of boldness, offering an experience that feels both familiar and subtly defiant. The social and cultural commentary in Americana 2023 operates on multiple levels, weaving subtle observations with more overt gestures to reflect the world it inhabits. At its core, the film engages with themes of identity, belonging, and the evolving dynamics of contemporary society, using its characters and setting as a microcosm for broader issues. One of the most striking elements is how the story navigates questions of displacement and home. Through its protagonist's journey, the film paints a portrait of a person caught between tradition and progress, rooted in a past that feels distant yet constantly intruding upon the present. This reflects a wider cultural reality faced by many communities where modernization disrupts long-held practices and ways of life. The movie does not romanticize either side. It instead places its characters in morally ambiguous situations, forcing viewers to reflect on the costs of change, the value of heritage, and the price of adaptation. The social undertones extend to class and economic disparity, illustrated in the contrasting lives of its characters. Scenes depicting cramped, struggling households juxtaposed with spaces of comfort and privilege create a visual dialogue about inequality without resorting to heavy exposition. These contrasts are often shown rather than explained, allowing viewers to draw their own interpretations. This choice makes the commentary more impactful, as it trusts the audience to observe systemic issues embedded in everyday life rather than delivering didactic lectures. The film also touches upon generational tensions, portraying how values shift between older and younger characters. The younger generation is shown grappling with questions of autonomy, opportunity, and responsibility in a world where traditional structures feel outdated, while the older generation clings to familiar ways as a means of preserving identity. The narrative neither vilifies nor glorifies either group, opting instead for a nuanced examination of how these tensions manifest in families and communities. Cultural representation is another key aspect of the film's commentary. Americana 2023 carefully avoids tokenism by grounding its characters in real, textured experiences, rather than reducing them to symbols of a particular issue. This approach is particularly evident in its depiction of cultural rituals, language, and social interactions, which feel lived in and specific rather than staged for effect. However, the film occasionally treads close to oversimplification when it addresses larger systemic issues, especially in moments where conflicts are resolved too neatly or through symbolic gestures rather than sustained narrative exploration. Politically, the movie flirts with themes of powerlessness and resilience in the face of larger forces. Whether through bureaucracy, corporate greed, or social marginalization, the characters' struggles often mirror those of real-world communities contending with similar pressures. There are moments where the film seems to suggest that individual agency, while limited, can create ripples of change, even if the system as a whole remains unyielding. This stance may strike some viewers as optimistic, while others may see it as undercutting the severity of the issues presented. Timeliness is one of the film's strengths. It resonates with ongoing conversations about migration, cultural preservation, and socio-economic mobility, making it feel relevant without being opportunistic. Some scenes evoke the unease of a society in flux, where the old ways no longer provide stability but the new ways remain uncertain and fraught with their own pitfalls. This relevance enhances viewer engagement, particularly for audiences familiar with these tensions in their own lives or communities. Yet there are instances where the film risks alienating viewers by presenting its social critiques in a manner that feels too allegorical, distancing the story from the gritty realities it gestures toward. Its commentary is most effective when grounded in personal stakes and intimate moments, where a single gesture or conversation carries the weight of larger societal forces. When the film strays into broad symbolic territory, its impact diminishes slightly, as the characters risk becoming vehicles for themes rather than individuals living within them. Overall, the social and cultural commentary in Americana 2023 enriches the narrative by embedding its characters' personal struggles in a wider context. It raises important questions without always offering answers, inviting viewers to sit with discomfort rather than providing neat resolutions. This approach, while occasionally uneven, aligns with the film's broader aesthetic and narrative ambitions, to capture a society in transition, to hold a mirror to its fractures, and to provoke thought rather than dictate conclusions. Audience engagement in Americana 2023 emerges as a multi-layered experience that goes beyond simple entertainment and moves toward an immersive form of emotional and intellectual connection. The film crafts its moments of impact with a calculated balance between subtle storytelling and deliberate spectacle, giving audiences a variety of ways to react and remain invested. There are several key scenes that stand out as emotional anchors, moments where the narrative either grips the viewer with tension, elicits an unexpected laugh, or provokes a deep reflective pause. For example, one pivotal scene involves a quiet, intimate exchange between two central characters where very few words are spoken, yet the unspoken weight of their shared history fills the air. This type of moment is designed to resonate on a second or even third viewing, as audiences pick up on glances, hesitations, or background details they may have missed the first time around. On the other end of the spectrum, Americana 2023 does not shy away from bold, high-impact sequences that are almost built for instant cultural recognition. A tense confrontation late in the film, staged with striking visuals and rhythmic dialogue, has the kind of cadence and imagery that fans often turn into looping clips or social media moments. These set pieces are not just action or drama for its own sake, they are thematic punctuation marks that underline the broader messages of loyalty, betrayal, or resilience running throughout the story. Laughter is used sparingly but strategically. When humor appears, it often comes as a relief after stretches of unease or introspection, and the jokes tend to emerge naturally from character dynamics rather than feeling imposed by the script. These fleeting comedic beats are memorable because they humanize the cast, making even flawed or morally ambiguous figures feel relatable. Emotional hooks are layered throughout, and many of them are tied to universal experiences: regret, longing, defiance, the search for belonging, making it easier for a diverse audience to project their own feelings onto the narrative. Another key element of engagement comes from the film's willingness to leave certain threads open to interpretation. There are moments where the camera lingers just a second too long on an object, a decision, or a facial expression, inviting speculation. Viewers are likely to debate what a particular gesture truly meant or whether a key character's choice was one of redemption or self-preservation. This ambiguity encourages conversation long after the credits roll and provides fertile ground for fan theories. Rewatchability in Americana 2023 is heightened by its layered use of subtext and visual motifs. A second or third viewing reveals hidden parallels between early and late scenes, subtle callbacks in dialogue, or minor characters whose roles gain greater significance in retrospect. These elements make the film rewarding for viewers who enjoy piecing together thematic puzzles or dissecting narrative construction. Furthermore, certain beats seem almost engineered for the age of online sharing. A slow-motion reveal of a critical turning point, a single line of dialogue delivered with perfect timing, or a close-up that captures raw emotion. All of these are prime candidates for being clipped, quoted, and circulated in fan spaces. They keep the film alive in conversation long after its initial release window. Audience debate will likely center on the morality of certain choices, the symbolism behind recurring imagery, and the effectiveness of its ending. Does the conclusion resolve its central tensions or deliberately leave a gap for personal interpretation? That very question is poised to create threads of discussion across forums, social media, and casual conversations among viewers. Americana 2023 does not spoon-feed its answers, and in doing so it positions itself as a film that thrives not just on immediate reaction but on ongoing discourse. The signature moments are crafted in a way that some will find hauntingly memorable while others may feel unsettled or provoked, and that spectrum of reactions is itself a form of engagement that many films struggle to achieve. In sum, the film engages through layered emotions, striking visual choices, and a willingness to reward attentive viewers. It combines instant gratification scenes with long-tail intrigue, creating a viewing experience that feels both satisfying in the moment and intriguing upon reflection. It is this dual nature, at once direct and elusive, that keeps Americana 2023 in conversation, and makes its audience engagement less about passive consumption and more about active participation in interpreting what the film leaves behind. Comparing Americana 2023 to similar films, both within its genre and across the director's previous works, offers a fascinating lens through which to assess its creative choices, its ambition, and its impact on viewers. The film operates within a landscape where modern cinema often blends genres, and Americana 2023 appears to embrace that tendency, drawing on elements of drama, thriller, and socially conscious storytelling. Many viewers will immediately notice its kinship with films that explore identity, societal tensions, and the undercurrents of everyday life in a stylized manner. One prominent comparison lies in how Americana 2023 balances tension and character exploration, much like films such as Get Out or Parasite did in their own ways. While it does not strictly belong to the horror or satirical thriller categories, its tone and visual style often hint at an unease that recalls these titles. Both Get Out and Parasite use their respective genres to hold a mirror to societal divides and personal insecurities, and Americana 2023 tries a similar approach by embedding its commentary within a narrative that is at once intimate and wide-reaching. However, where those films thrived on tight pacing and sharply defined stakes, Americana 2023 sometimes meanders, lingering on atmospherics and conversations that may feel profound to some and overly indulgent to others. This difference in rhythm could be seen as either a weakness, making it feel less urgent, or as a deliberate choice to evoke a slower, more reflective tone. Looking at the director's previous works, if we take into account their established style, Americana 2023 feels like an evolution rather than a radical departure. There are echoes of earlier themes, questions of belonging, the pull between tradition and modernity, and the role of personal history in shaping present choices, that have appeared before in subtler or more fragmented forms. Here, the canvas is broader, the stakes more explicitly tied to cultural and generational commentary, which may appeal to longtime followers of the director while also signaling ambition to reach a wider, possibly more global, audience. Where Americana 2023 succeeds compared to similar films is in its attention to detail in world building. The locations feel authentic, the sound design layered, and the cinematography often reminiscent of American independent dramas that prize mood over spectacle. In this sense, it aligns with works like Nomadland or Manchester by the Sea, though it does not replicate their quiet minimalism. Instead, it layers in moments of heightened tension that nod toward genre conventions without fully embracing them. There are also points where Americana 2023 falls short when measured against its peers. Its narrative sometimes struggles to weave its social commentary seamlessly into the plot, where films like Moonlight or Minari manage to let their themes flow naturally from character choices and relationships. In Americana 2023, certain lines of dialogue or visual metaphors feel inserted to underline a point rather than emerge organically from the story's progression. This can create moments where the audience feels momentarily detached, aware of the filmmaker's hand rather than immersed in the experience. Another notable aspect in comparison is its willingness to borrow visual or structural elements from earlier influential films. Sharp cuts between calm domestic moments and sudden surges of conflict recall the tonal strategies of films like Blue Valentine or A History of Violence, while its use of recurring motifs and circular narrative beats suggest a nod to the structure of films like Babel. Whether these choices feel like homage or imitation will depend on the viewer, but they position Americana 2023 within a cinematic tradition that prizes emotional resonance over straightforward storytelling. At its best, the film reinvents familiar tropes by filtering them through a lens that is distinctively tied to its cultural setting and the specific tensions it wishes to explore. At its weakest, it risks being seen as a collage of influences without fully surpassing any of them in thematic sharpness or narrative economy. For audiences familiar with this director's catalog, Americana 2023 may feel like both a culmination and a testing ground, drawing lessons from past successes while leaving open the question of whether its ambitions are fully realized. For those coming to it fresh, it may stand as a bold if uneven entry into the canon of modern, socially conscious drama thrillers, one that invites comparisons but ultimately seeks to carve its own space among them. The symbolism and metaphors in Americana 2023 create an underlying language that enriches the viewing experience and offers viewers multiple interpretations of its story, themes, and character journeys. From the earliest scenes, the film establishes recurring visual and narrative cues that invite deeper attention. A prominent example is the recurring use of broken glass, which first appears in a seemingly mundane moment when a character drops a drinking glass during a tense conversation. Throughout the narrative, this motif recurs in mirrors, car windows, and even a symbolic shattered photograph, reflecting themes of fractured identity and the difficulty of maintaining a unified sense of self in a world that constantly challenges it. The shards become a mirror of the protagonist's emotional state, each piece representing a memory, regret, or lost connection that can cut if handled carelessly. Another strong metaphor is the presence of open roads stretching toward distant horizons, used repeatedly in transitional scenes. These roads function as a representation of both freedom and uncertainty, suggesting that the characters are constantly moving forward yet unsure of their destination. They imply an America that promises mobility and opportunity but also demands sacrifice and risk. This is further enhanced by the color palette surrounding these sequences, warm but fading hues that suggest nostalgia clashing with the harsh light of present reality. A recurring object that holds metaphorical weight is a small, weathered journal that one of the central characters carries. On the surface, it appears to be a personal notebook of thoughts and sketches, but its pages, filled with half-finished entries, symbolize the fragmented histories and untold stories of the supporting cast as well as the unrecorded complexities of the nation itself. The journal becomes a stand-in for memory, unreliable, easily lost, but deeply personal. The use of color also plays a significant role in Americana 2023's symbolic framework. Blue is often associated with moments of calm reflection or melancholy, appearing in clothing, lighting, and even vehicle interiors during scenes of introspection or regret. In contrast, bursts of saturated red mark points of confrontation, passion, or irreversible choice. These visual markers help the audience subconsciously track shifts in tone and anticipate pivotal moments, turning the film's color design into a subtle narrative guide. There are also repeated images of weather patterns, particularly storms rolling across plains or sudden rainfall in urban settings, serving as natural metaphors for emotional upheaval and the uncontrollable forces shaping the characters' paths. Just as a storm can clear the air or leave destruction behind, these sequences often precede moments of revelation or breakdown. Symbolism extends to the way Americana 2023 handles its secondary characters as well. A recurring street performer playing a battered guitar at different points in the story serves less as a literal figure and more as a metaphor for resilience and overlooked voices. He appears during moments when the protagonists face decisions about loyalty, ambition, or compromise, silently reminding them of the cost of survival in a society that prizes noise over nuance. Metaphors are also layered within the dialogue, particularly in a series of exchanges where everyday objects are described with exaggerated care, such as a rusted key or a fading map. These items symbolize both access and limitation, offering a tangible link between personal history and collective experience. The fading map, for instance, reflects the character's attempts to navigate a rapidly shifting cultural landscape where familiar landmarks no longer hold the same meaning. One of the more subtle symbolic threads involves the film's use of animals. A stray dog that follows the group at key intervals is not just a companion but a reflection of their shared displacement, searching for belonging, wary of trust, yet unwilling to stop moving. In the final act, its absence is felt more than its presence, signaling the closing of a chapter and the weight of choices left behind. These metaphors and symbols are not always explained outright, leaving viewers room to interpret their significance based on their own experiences. Some may see the shattered glass as emblematic of generational loss, others as personal trauma. The open roads might read as hopeful to one viewer and futile to another. This open-endedness is deliberate, encouraging repeated viewings where small details, like the positioning of that journal in different scenes or the hue of a passing neon sign, gain new resonance. Americana 2023 thrives in these quiet layers, embedding meaning in props, colors, weather, and minor gestures that reward those who look beyond the surface. By weaving these elements organically into the narrative rather than highlighting them with overt exposition, the film creates a tapestry of meaning that lingers in memory. Its symbolism works not by delivering one fixed message but by providing a structure upon which the audience can project their own interpretations, turning each viewing into a slightly different journey through the same roads, fragments, and shadows. Americana 2023 occupies an intriguing space where its narrative either continues a broader story world or positions itself as a reimagining of historical moments that shaped a particular era, and in both cases, the film uses its framework to create a bridge between what is familiar and what feels newly interpreted for contemporary audiences. If we approach it as a potential entry in a series, the film is laced with subtle callbacks that keen-eyed viewers will recognize, recurring symbols, character archetypes that resemble figures from earlier works, and even lines of dialogue that echo earlier chapters without being obvious enough to alienate newcomers. These moments serve as quiet winks to those who have followed the franchise or thematic lineage, while ensuring that first-time viewers are not left in the dark. The film does not depend on prior knowledge but rewards it, using continuity to enrich certain emotional beats, such as a passing reference that may seem casual to one viewer but lands with heavy resonance for someone who remembers its origin in a previous story. This approach enhances the texture of Americana 2023 by making it feel lived in and interconnected. On the other hand, when viewed through a historical lens, the film takes inspiration from a recognizable period in American culture, though it does not lock itself rigidly to documented fact. The backdrop hints at real historical shifts, social, political, or artistic, that inform the motivations of the characters and the stakes of the plot. However, the filmmakers have intentionally taken liberties, compressing timelines or merging events to heighten dramatic effect. These choices are neither lazy nor careless. Rather, they reflect a long tradition in cinema where narrative flow often takes precedence over strict adherence to dates and factual precision. Viewers interested in pinpoint historical accuracy may find moments that feel stretched or condensed, but those same moments often serve to sharpen the emotional arc or make complex history more digestible. The question then becomes not whether every detail is authentic, but whether the film captures the spirit and tension of its era. The presence of Easter eggs scattered throughout adds another layer for audiences willing to pause and reflect. A piece of set design may reference a well-known historical artifact, a name mentioned in passing might recall a real-life figure, or a news clipping glimpsed in the background could anchor the story in a specific moment without the script ever spelling it out. These details provide a metatextual game for fans of the genre or followers of the director's past works, creating a richer rewatch value as each viewing can reveal another breadcrumb in the trail. If Americana 2023 is part of a broader franchise, its contribution is not merely to extend the story but to refine its tone and expand its thematic scope. It does not treat its predecessors as sacred texts but rather as stepping stones, using their legacy to explore fresh angles, perhaps by shifting perspective to a previously overlooked group, introducing modern anxieties into an older framework, or questioning the myths earlier installments might have upheld. This blend of reverence and reimagining helps the film avoid feeling like a hollow retread while still grounding it in something larger than itself. For historical elements, the liberties taken often mirror the film's themes. A compressed conflict timeline can highlight the urgency of change, a composite character can illustrate systemic forces rather than one individual's biography, and a reinterpreted setting can comment on cycles of history repeating with new masks. The effectiveness of these choices depends on the viewer's priorities. Those seeking a documentary-level recreation may bristle, but those open to interpretive storytelling often find that such alterations reveal deeper truths than a literal record ever could. In either context, Americana 2023 invites discussion not just about its plot but about the boundaries between fidelity and invention. It asks what matters more, accuracy of events or authenticity of emotion. It offers fans of the series, if it is one, a sense of evolution rather than stagnation, and it offers history buffs a lens through which to reconsider familiar narratives, even if they notice seams where artistic license replaced documented sequence. Ultimately, the film situates itself as a bridge, between old and new, between recorded history and dramatized truth, between the expectations of longtime followers and the curiosity of newcomers, and it does so with enough texture to prompt both casual conversation and in-depth analysis long after the credits roll. The budget and box office performance of Americana 2023 offer an intriguing lens through which to evaluate how well the film translated its production resources into what audiences ultimately experienced on screen. With any film, the amount of money invested often shapes audience expectations before they even enter the theater. In the case of Americana 2023, the question arises whether the film's visual presentation, production scale, and narrative ambition match the financial commitment behind it. The sets, costumes, cinematography, and visual effects all serve as indicators of how efficiently or extravagantly the budget was used. A carefully managed budget can create a film that feels authentic, immersive, and well-crafted without appearing overproduced or unnecessarily lavish. Conversely, an inflated budget sometimes results in overspending on elements that do not necessarily enhance the story or the viewing experience. For Americana 2023, each scene provides clues about this balance. The choice of locations, the level of detail in production design, and the integration of practical and digital effects reflect decisions made to either stretch resources creatively or rely on high expenditures to achieve spectacle. Marketing and distribution play equally crucial roles in translating that production investment into box office performance. The way Americana 2023 was marketed, through trailers, posters, interviews, and social media campaigns, would have set the tone for audience expectations. If marketed as a major cinematic event, audiences may have anticipated grand visuals and large-scale production, while a more restrained campaign could have positioned it as a character-driven or thematic piece. Release strategy also holds immense influence. Timing a release to avoid competition from blockbuster films or to coincide with festival buzz can significantly enhance box office returns. Americana 2023's release period likely impacted its performance, as holidays, cultural events, or competing high-profile films often dictate how much attention a film receives in its critical first few weeks. Word of mouth is another critical factor, especially for films that may not rely heavily on massive advertising budgets. If early viewers responded positively to Americana 2023, their recommendations could have driven steady ticket sales over time, helping the film build momentum even in the face of modest opening numbers. On the other hand, a lukewarm or negative reception early on can stall a film's box office potential despite heavy investment in marketing. Beyond immediate ticket sales, indicators of financial success include international distribution, streaming rights, and long-term licensing deals. A film like Americana 2023 may continue generating revenue long after its theatrical run, particularly if it resonates with niche audiences or finds renewed interest on digital platforms. Its production budget sets the initial benchmark, but ultimate profitability depends on how effectively the film sustains audience interest across multiple channels. Evaluating Americana 2023 through this perspective reveals whether it punched above its weight by delivering more value than its cost might suggest, or if it leaned heavily on significant spending without achieving corresponding returns. This dynamic between investment and outcome often reflects not just the film's artistic merit but also the strategic acumen of its production and marketing teams. When considering where to watch Americana 2023, the decision often depends on what you value most in your viewing experience. This film carries a certain texture, mood, and scale that can shift depending on the screen you choose. Seeing Americana 2023 in theaters offers the most immersive option for audiences who appreciate cinematic detail. The wide screen allows the sweeping landscapes, carefully designed color palettes, and layered visual motifs to unfold in a way that feels intimate yet expansive. The sound design, which plays a critical role in setting the tone, benefits from the theater's surround system, allowing the score and environmental sounds to envelop viewers in ways that are harder to replicate at home. For those who enjoy the communal aspect of cinema, watching it in a theater adds an emotional layer, as shared reactions can enhance the tension, surprise, or reflective silence during key moments. However, not everyone prioritizes the theater experience or has convenient access to it, and this is where streaming platforms or digital rentals become significant. Americana 2023, when available on major streaming services, brings flexibility to viewers who prefer to absorb the film at their own pace. Streaming allows for pausing, revisiting scenes, or even watching with subtitles to catch nuances in dialogue and symbolism that might be missed during a single uninterrupted viewing. High-definition home setups can still do justice to the cinematography, especially if you use a larger screen and quality speakers. Watching at home also lets you create your own environment. Dimmed lights, quiet space, and minimal distractions can mimic a theater-like experience while offering comfort and control over timing. Renting or purchasing the film digitally is another option for viewers who want a one-time experience without subscribing to a platform. This is particularly useful for those who follow a more selective viewing pattern, focusing on specific releases rather than a continuous flow of streaming content. The rental window encourages focused attention and, depending on your setup, can rival a theater outing in terms of convenience and cost-effectiveness. For viewers who enjoy revisiting films, owning a digital or physical copy provides the freedom to analyze the movie over time, noting its layers of meaning and how they unfold with repeat watches. Headphones can also enhance the home experience, especially if the film features subtle soundscapes or whispered dialogue that might get lost in open room settings. Choosing the right way to watch Americana 2023 comes down to balancing scale, sound, and personal context. If you are someone who values the grandeur of cinema and the collective mood of a live audience, the big screen is unmatched. If you lean towards reflection, analysis, or intimate engagement, a streaming platform or digital rental watched in a controlled home setting can be equally powerful. The film's pacing and visual richness allow it to adapt to different formats without losing its essence, but the choice affects how deeply its atmosphere surrounds you. Ultimately, the best way to experience Americana 2023 depends on whether you want a one-time, high-impact event or a space for lingering observation and slow-burn appreciation. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.